They fired me from a corporate office job in Atlanta because of who I loved. 6 months later, I was working as a home healthcare nurse, barely making rent, when the patient file handed to me had a familiar name on it. The CEO of the company that destroyed my career. What happened in that house over the next 3 months proved that sometimes life puts you face to face with the people who hurt you and forces you to decide what kind of person you really are. My name is Isaiah Grant. I'm 28 years old, and this is the story of how the man who signed my termination papers ended up completely dependent on me for his most basic needs, and why the choice I made in that moment defined everything about who I could become. I grew up in East Atlanta, raised by a single mom who worked nights as a nurse to put me through school. She taught me that dignity comes from helping people, that your worth is unmeasured by your paycheck, but by how you treat others when nobody's watching. I got my nursing degree, but the starting pay was low. So when I was offered an administrative job at Meridian Financial Group, a big investment firm, I took it. The pay was good, and I figured I could do it for a few years, save money, and then go back to healthcare. I was 25 and believed competence was all that mattered. Meridian was one of those places where image was everything. I was one of 3 black employees in an office of 60, and I was openly gay. I wasn't hiding my relationship with my boyfriend, Andre. For 2 years, everything seemed fine. I was good at my job. My supervisor told me I was one of the best. The CEO was a man named Graham Whitmore. He'd inherited the company and was all about maintaining a traditional image. He was polite, but you could tell he judged people on whether they fit his mold. One evening, Andre picked me up from work. I gave him a quick kiss in the parking garage. The next morning, I was called into HR. They said employees had expressed discomfort about my unprofessional conduct. I pointed out I'd seen straight couples do the same thing all the time. They told me my presence was creating discomfort for key stakeholders, and it was best if we parted ways. I asked directly, am I being fired because I'm gay? They said it was a cultural fit issue. They handed me a termination letter already signed by Graham Whitmore. Just like that, my career was over. I hired a lawyer to fight it, but lawsuits take time and money I didn't have. After weeks of rejections, I went back to nursing. I took a job with a home healthcare agency for nearly half my previous salary. The work was exhausting, but it was meaningful. I was actually helping people. 6 months later, I got a new patient assignment, private care, premium pay. I opened the file. The patient's name was Graham Whitmore. He'd had a severe stroke. He was paralyzed on one side, couldn't speak clearly, and needed full-time assistance with everything. His wife had requested an experienced male nurse. The man who'd fired me was now completely dependent on someone like me for his survival. Kadami wanted to refuse, but I desperately needed the money. Kadi and another part of me wondered if this was a test. I took the job. I told myself I was a professional. When I walked into his room in that huge mansion, I saw the recognition dawn in his eyes. He knew who I was. He tried to speak, but only grunts came out. He was trapped in his own body, and I was the one hired to care for him. That first week was tense. He was frustrated, humiliated. I had to help him eat, bathe, use the bathroom. Every single task that would strip a proud man of his dignity, I performed with as much professionalism and compassion as I could muster. Not for him, but for myself. About 2 weeks in, something shifted. He was getting a little speech back. One afternoon, he managed to say something that sounded like sorry. Tears were streaming down his face. It took him 5 minutes, but he got it out. He knew what he'd done to me was wrong. I sat there, holding a spoonful of applesauce, looking at this broken man. I felt anger, sure, but also pity. I told him I heard his apology. I wasn't sure if I forgave him, but I acknowledged it. Over the next 2 months, I was there for every small victory in his recovery. His wife, Rebecca, eventually found out our history. She was horrified and offered to find another nurse. I told her I would stay if Graham was comfortable. He nodded yes. Then, my lawyer called. Meridian wanted to settle my discrimination case. They offered $120,000, a written apology, and anti-discrimination training for the company. I looked at Graham. He struggled, but said, "Take it, deserve more." I took the settlement. The money changed my life. I paid off my debts, got engaged to Andre, and put a down payment on a condo. Before I left the Whitmores, Graham gave me a letter he'd written with his non-dominant hand. He wrote that his stroke had taught him what it meant to be vulnerable and dependent on someone as kindness. He said he'd learned more about character from watching me than in his whole life before. He'd made a donation to an LGBTQ advocacy group in my name. I still don't know if I've fully forgiven him. Forgiveness is complicated. But I know that caring for him taught me something vital. I could have let bitterness make me cruel. Instead, I chose to be the person my mother raised. That choice didn't undo the past, but it meant I decided who I became because of it. I refused to give him the power to change me for the worse. So here's my question for you. If you were in my shoes, would you have taken the job? Would you have been able to show compassion to the person who destroyed your career? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for watching.